So welcome to the coziest quilt ever. Today we're going to be making rag quilts the easiest way possible. No cutting, no batting, just straight to the sewing. And these two quilts, they were my first rag quilts over 20 years ago. This one was for my daddy and this was for my mom. This one, however, I just made last week. So I'm going to walk you through the 9 steps that I follow to make my rag quilts. And you can make these rag quilts in a day. Along the way, I'm going to give you 5 of my favorite tips when making a rag quilt. So from chain stitching to making sure those bobbins are full and all the tools you'll need to make this rag quilt, I'll walk you through all 9 steps. You'll want to stick around. It's going to be so much fun. Next up, let's see what we need to make this rag quilt. Well, you're going to need a sewing machine, but you don't need a fancy one. You just need to be able to sew a straight stitch. Okay, so we have our sewing machine taken care of, but then what you'll want to do is get a walking foot to fit your machine. So even though you don't need a fancy machine to do this, this walking foot will make making these rag quilts a dream. All right, so we have our machine, we have our walking foot. The next thing you need is thread. So I think it's preference. I use 100% polyester and I've used 100% cotton. The ones that I showed you that were 20 years old, they were made with 100% cotton thread. The one I just sewed was with polyester. But you just need thread, really good quality thread, and then find your bobbins. I never win the bobbin lottery, so I always start with 3 full bobbins when I do these. So let's talk about the fabric. And this is where I gain a lot of speed in making these rag quilts. I use pre-cuts. So I either use a layer cake, which is 42 squares of 10 by 10, or I use a charm pack, let's get it right here, which are the 5 by 5 squares, and I use 2 of them. I will use 100% cotton on the front, and I will use a flannel layer cake on the back. So if you're not using pre-cuts, you only need 42 squares for the front and 42 squares on the back. And if you're cutting your own material, you can make it any size that you want. They don't have to be 10 by 10s or 5 by 5s. They can be 8 by 8s or 6 by 6. But because I use the pre-cuts, they come in those 2 sizes. And that's what I'm going to be demonstrating today with. I'm actually going to be demonstrating with the 5 by 5 so that we can get everything in frame. But the process is the same for the 10 by 10s. And I will actually show you a 10 by 10 that was created in the same exact. So we have walked through what we need for the quilt. And I'll just recap it. We need the sewing machine, a walking foot, good thread, at least 3 bobbins, and your fabric. You're going to need some snippers, and you're going to need a lint brush. Now it's time to wash that quilt and get those edges fraying. I use a mesh bag, and I use microfiber cloths, and I use these Shout color cleaners. So I know that seems like a lot. We went through what we need for the quilt, what we need to clip, and what we need to wash. But just check in the description. I have a printable down there, and you can just download it, and it has all of the information above on it. So now with that, it is time to get ready to make our quilt. And the first thing we're going to do is to make our fabric sandwiches. Are you ready to go? Well, let's go sew. Let's get started with step number 1, which is to create your fabric sandwiches. So again, we're using pre-cuts, and you can either use a layer cake or you can use a charm pack. And I'm going to use a charm pack for this demonstration just so it's going to be easier for us to get a gauge on the whole process. So like I can get all the quilt in frame when we go to do putting the rows together and the clipping. There's no difference whether you use a charm pack or whether you use a layer cake. We're going to take 1 square of the cotton. We're going to take 1 square of the flannel, and we're going to layer them wrong side together. So your right sides will be out. And this is one of the first things you have to get used to. Normally when we do things like this, it's right sides together. For this rag quilt, your wrong sides are going to be together. All right, so I have both of my charm packs here, and I'm going to take a piece from the cotton side, and I'm going to lay it face down. Again, these are wrong side together. I'm going to take a piece from my flannel, and I'm going to lay it on top. Here's how I stage them. So I consider that my fabric sandwich. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to alternate them. So I'm going to lay the next square on top of it, but at an alternate angle. And then I'm going to take my piece from my flannel, and I'm going to continue to do this until I'm done. So this is just setting up the fabric sandwiches so that I can chain stitch them once I have them all ready. Okay, so let's quickly recap step 1. We used 2 charm packs. I used 100% cotton and 1 flannel. and we're going to use a 5x5 for demonstration purposes. We are putting them wrong side together, and we are stacking our fabric sandwiches in this fashion so that we can chain stitch them together. So now we're ready to sew the big X on our fabric sandwiches. So here's your stack of fabric sandwiches. You have your walking foot on. We're going to just pick up one of those fabric sandwiches, and again, they're wrong side together. We're going to put it under our presser foot of our walking foot, and we are just going to sew from one side to the other, or on the diagonal. Then we are going to pick up another fabric sandwich, and we are going to just put it under the feet and just sew. And you can sit here and feed all of these in, and you're going to chain stitch all 42 squares. I'm going to sew on the diagonal, and I don't know that you can see it from the top, maybe, so I just put it on here, and we're just going to sew on the diagonal, and you're going to do all 42. So let me get first side of our big X finished, and then I will come back and we will sew the remaining side of the big X. All right, so now you have sewn all of the one side and you've chain stitched them. So here's what you should have. You should have all of your squares on one single thread. Now, snip all those threads and restack your squares in the same manner, and then we will sew the other side of the X. All right, so we are just going to chain stitch from the opposite corner in the very same manner that we did to make the big X. Okay, so let me finish sewing the big X on those rest of the 42 squares, and I'll be right back. We'll get them clipped, and then we will stack them, and we'll get ready for step 2, which is laying out our quilt design. All right, we have finished the second side of the X. So let me get these clipped and organized. So this time when you organize them, you can just lay them one right on top of the other, because now we're gonna build the quilt and we don't need them staggered anymore. So just clip them and stack them on top, and I will see you back here. All right, so I've clipped them all and I've stacked them. So this time I just stacked them all in the same direction. So for the next step, which is designing our quilt, you're gonna need a good size area to lay out your block. We have 42 squares, so the quilt is going to be a 6x7. And again, it doesn't matter whether you're using the charm pack or the layer cake. The process is the same. I have laid out my quilt in my 6x7 rows. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go and check to make sure that I do not have any duplicate flannels. So for example, you want to make sure that the flannel on the back of these are not duplicated. So what I will do is I will run through here and I will flip all of them over to make sure that they are different. So you want this to be different than this one. You want this one to be different than this, and so forth, so that when you flip your quilt over, that it will have the same patchwork design. So you just have to just take a look at how you have it designed on the front, flip them over, and if you find any flannel that are alike side by side or up and down, just then move them around. I'll take a piece of painter's tape and I'll put in the center of each squares and give them a number. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the odd number and put it on top of the even number. So 1 goes on top, 3 will be on top, and 5 will be on top. All right, a couple things you notice here. I have painter's tape at my 1/2 inch seam line. I do this so that I can keep a 1/2 inch seam. When I'm doing the 5 inch squares, the charm squares, I only use a 1/2 inch. When I do the 10 inch, I use almost 1 inch, so it goes all the way over here. But for right now, I just put this painter's tape down here so I have a nice little line. And again, I have 1 and 2 squares, and I'm going to sew on the right side of our block. And at this point in time, you don't have to back stitch, so you just want to line it up with your painter's tape or whatever you're using to keep a straight seam. and then just stitch the seam. And then in a similar manner that we were chain stitching, we're going to take our next set, which is rows 3 and 4. And again, your odd number is on top, your even number is on the bottom. So just positioning them to where they're even. Under your pressure foot, get them in there, and then just sew your seam. I'm going to line up my squares, moving them over from the table. I got them a little off. I'm going to put them under the presser foot. Continue to sew. Now we're building the row. So we want to work this entire row before we go and stitch any of the other rows. So you'll see here I have 1, 3, and 5. So I have all of our odd numbers. So when you clip these, you're going to take and open them up. I lost my 2. So there's 2, and here's 3 and 4, right? So now you're going to take 2 and 3 and sew them together. And again, whether you're using a charm pack or a layer cake, it is the same exact process. Layer cakes are just a little bit bigger squares. And again, we're going to sew that. And then open this back up, and everything's still in number order, right? 1, 2, 3, and 4. So then you pull in your last. And so then we are going to sew square 4 to square 5. Line them up. Let's get that under the pressure. Oh, let's get it under the pressure foot and sew your seam. All right, so we have the first row in our sample quilt to show you the technique finished. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So they're all in order. What we'll do is we'll take this back to the layout table, and then I will grab the next row and number them. And I will continue to sew on my quilt until I have all 7 rows completed. So I wanted to stop after I had about 3 rows to show you. I have flipped my rows on the back side so that I can ensure that the flannel is all lining up as well. And you see, I just continue the process where I take my numbers and move them to the next row. So I'll continue sewing this, and then once I have finished, I will come back. We will flip all of these over, and then we will proceed to put the quilt together. So here we are, all of our rows are finished. So I'm going to put a piece of painter's tape on each one of these, and I'm going to start at the very top, and that's going to be row number 1, and this is going to be row number 7. There you can see it. We have rows 1 through 7. Now the next step that we are going to do will be to sew our rows together. Let's do 1 and 2. We will do 3 and 4. We will do 5 and 6. And then once we have done our rows in pairs, we will sew 7 to 6. All right, so take row 1 and 2 with row 2 facing you and match that first set of seams up like this. And if it hangs over, if one of these squares hangs over more than the other, that's okay. Make sure you have the seams matched here. Now go ahead and set it under your presser foot, keeping your hands on there so that it'll keep them together. Let's go ahead and get it under the presser foot using your marker here for your seam allowance. And then at this point, then just straighten up the rest of your rows. So what is going to be really important here is when you get to these seams, you're actually going to back stitch in here. So you're going to reinforce the seam or the stitches right here. So just slowly, and at the beginning back stitch as well. So back stitch here, and this is the first time we've back stitched through this whole process. So just go slow, and as you come onto these seams, you'll find that, again, if you've not used a walking foot, this is where you're gonna love it. All right, so, and I'm gonna go a little bit slower here so that I can demonstrate this. So as I come over the seam, I just let the walking foot do its business. I'm gonna back stitch in there, and then I'm gonna let it go. Then I'm going to put my needle down and I'm going to flatten out the next set of seams. Now, if you are used to using clips or pins, then by all means, I just never do. So I just work them like this, and it's always worked for me. But if you're a pinner or a clipper, then pin all your seams open, but I just work mine as I go. So it's flat on the bottom, it is flat on the top here. I'm going to continue to sew. And then as I approach that seam, I'm going to get ready to do my back stitch. I'm going to put my needle down and I'm going to flatten out my seams, and I'm going to continue to work my row. Again, we're just going to keep following our seam guide over here, and we're going to get to that middle, and we're going to back stitch. And the big thing for this process, I still have a 6 sticker. A big thing for this process is to keep those seams flat. Now, if you come to where the seams aren't quite matching up, like in this case here, go ahead and put the seams together. So keep the seams together, and you might have just a little puckering here. Well, we're just going to work that in. So it'll work in behind the flap here. But the main thing is you want all your seams to match. And you know, as much as you try, you might get your stitches off every now and then. Everybody does. So I'm just going to work this one in towards this seam. Once you clip these and wash them, no one will ever know that those seams might not have matched 100%. And again, I'm going to backspace here. Backspace. I'm going to backstitch here. All right, I'm going to put my needle down. Always put your needle down. That way your material doesn't move on you, or you know, you don't have to worry about that. Just always put that needle down. So let's flatten out the seam. Flatten it out on top. Those match pretty good, maybe just a little bit. But yeah, so that's how I keep my seam straight, is that I will match the first one up right off the bat, match it. And then as you go along, if any of them don't match, make sure you go ahead and force match them, and then just work your material in. Then that way your seams are always straight. Okay, so we got that. We're almost at the end of sewing our first 2 rows together. So let me go. Okay, we got something stuck. Ah, I knew I had something stuck there. It's the one from that. Now back stitch here. All right, so we have sewn rows 1 and rows 2 together. So let's take a look. All right, so, and you see how I've sewn these seams open? So they're open here and they're open here. It is going to be a really cute little lap quilt. All right, so again, this was row number 1, this is row number 2. We are going to do the same process for the remaining rows 3 and 4, 5 and 6. So let me go get those done, and then I will come back and we'll talk about what we're going to do with row number 7 and then how we put the entire quilt together. Okay, so I sewed 1 and 2 together, I sewed 3 and 4 together, and I sewed 5 and 6 together. And then I have 7. So I'm just going to take row 7 and sew it to row 6 so that I have a section of 3. And then I'm going to sew the 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 together so I have a section of 4. Okay, so now that you have sewed your rows together, you have a section of 4 rows and a section of 3 rows. So now to finish your quilt, we will sew the 4 rows and the 3 rows together, and then we will be done assembling the quilt. Once we are done with that, then we will run a seam all the way around the... All right, so there you go. We've sewn all of the rows together. Now the final step before we clip is we're going to run a 1/2 inch seam all the way around the quilt. Okay, so what I do when I run the stitches around the edges is I start about a 1/2 inch in, because I'm going to cut that corner out. So I'm going to drop my needle in there, lower my presser foot, and I'm going to stitch a little bit, and then I'm going to back stitch, because we'll eventually come back to that spot. as I stitch around the quilt, I'm going to flatten the seams. I got some bulk weight over here. All right. And as I get to the seams, I can flatten them just like when we do the rows and back stitch there as well. And so that's all you're doing in this step, is going around the quilt, flattening those seams, back stitching. And like I said, if you aren't comfortable with just one seam, then you can run around this and do a second seam, because we're going to clip the edges as well as all the rest of the seams. So again, it's just running a seam around it, flattening those seams open, doing a back stitch in them. And then when you get to this corner, you're going to do the same exact thing. So you're going to stop shy about a 1/2 inch. Let's drop that needle. We're going to back stitch. And then we're going to turn, we're going to drop the needle and we're going to turn it. And then we're going to drop our foot. Go ahead and open up the first seam. And then just continue all around the quilt. All right, so let me drop that needle. Let me finish up the quilt and then we will move on to clipping. All right, so the first thing I do is I cut out that corner, and I put my rag quilt on something that's about counter height for me. And I have a distinct process on how I cut my quilts. So I do them a row at a time. I think I'm gonna work this way. I do them a row at a time, and I will go through and I will clip, and I will clip here. So I will clip all of the seams open before I do any of the regular clipping. So I will take the row that I'm working on and I will go through and I will clip out the row. So I will, and again, I don't clip it all the way to the end, and I only do, like I say, I work a row at a time. Okay, so once I have all of those rows cut, you see they're much more flexible, right? Make sure that I have them all cut. Well, then I start right here. Then I start right here, and I'm going to clip this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. So I'm going to work my way up the row here, and I will do 2 rows at a time. So I will just put my clippers in, and mine are a good 1/4 inch. Now you have to be kind of careful. Don't clip this all the way to the seam, and then when you get to where your seams have come together, just clip them. What you have to be careful of is that you get all of the material, because sometimes your clippers will miss that bottom row when you're doing them 2 at a time. So again, I'm doing them 2 at a time. I clipped the edge to like loosen them. I pulled them back, and I'm just going to clip them. Okay, so I finished that row, and what I will do is I will turn it, and then I will work this row. So I worked this row first, I turned it, and now I work this row. So again, I will check and see if they're not where I can get them doubled over. I will go and clip them. Let's turn them this way. So let me turn it this way, and so I will clip these seams, because again, I want to cut them 2 at a time. Okay, so now that I've got them both clipped over, see, I can fold them over. See, I can fold them over, and I can clip it 2 at a time. And again, I'm a good 1/4 inch from that seam. And so these are, again, the 2 seams that were flat open, and I've clipped them, and so I'm going to cut them 2 at a time. All right, I have finished clipping all of this quilt. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it outside and shake it, and I'm going to rub the lint brush across it, and then I will come back and show you how I prepare it for washing, and then we'll do a nice before and after. It's gonna look really pretty. So I took this outside and I shook it really well. I mean really well. You should see the shirt I have. I should not wear a black shirt when I'm doing this. So, but I did give it a good couple, 3 or 4, probably 10 shakes on there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take my lint roller and roll across the seams. And I do all of this before I do the first washing. So I'm just going to roll the lint roller across all the seams, and you'll see it starts picking up the thread. So I'm going to go do this a little bit more aggressively, and then I will come back and show you what I do before I put it in the washer. Before I put it into the washer, I'm going to take these microfiber towels and the dry quilt, and I'm going to put it in the dryer for about 10 minutes. And I'm going to check on it every 2 or 3 minutes. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get as much of the raveling out before I put it into the washer. Again, the mesh bag here will help that tremendously, but let's go ahead and throw it in the dryer with a couple, actually I only have 2, a couple of the microfiber towels. And just remember, when you have this in the dryer, be sure to check your lint collector, because once we start drying it after we wash it, it will collect it quite often. Just keep that cleaned out. Okay, so I'm going to use one of these color catchers. They look just like this, and I'm going to use a mesh bag. So it's just a laundry bag that I bought off Amazon, and I'm going to put the quilt inside the mesh bag, and I'm going to put the color catcher inside the mesh bag. Right, so now I'm going to go wash it. I'm going to wash it on cold water, and then whenever it is finished, I will show you what it looks like coming out of the bag before it goes to the dryer. So here it is right out of the washer. So let's just take a look, and you can see that it captured a lot of the lint. So what I do now, and let's check out this color catcher. So it looks pretty good. Sometimes when you use a lot of red flannel, you get a lot. That's why I like this. Again, bag keeps all of that lint from going in the washer, and then we will put it in. All right, so I just returned from shaking it outside, and when I tell you you need to shake it outside, you really do. I have a black shirt on that. So again, just shake it really, really hard. And now we're going to put it in the dryer with those 2 microfiber cloths that we had. And then I'm just going to check on it and make sure that, you know, it's not getting out of my lint. These strings like this, we will take care of those when we are completely done. So we'll go back over it. We're going to test all of our seams. But again, using that mesh bag really, really helps a lot. But when you take it outside, you really have to shake this, and that will keep a lot of it out of dryer. So let me go take it to the dryer, and oh, you want to see the back of it? I didn't even think about that. So here is our back, and it did a good job. I didn't get any of them that are butted up against each other. Pretty, the back. So okay, let me go get this guy in the dryer, and we will come back and it will be all fluffy. All right, so I have it out of the dryer, and I've taken all the threads off of it. I gave it a light press, and there you go. So now it's time to do the rag quilt roll down. All right, you ready? Here is the rag quilt roll down. So let's recap today what we did using this teaching quilt, which again is just a smaller size of my regular quilt, but it's just condensed down so that you can see all the steps. You make the 10-inch rag quilt in the very exact same way. So what we did, we picked out our fabric, we made our fabric sandwiches, we made and stitched the big X, then we sorted out and put our rows together. We sewed our rows, then we sewed our rows together to make our quilt. We hemmed all the way around the quilt, we clipped it, we washed it, and we dried it. So there you have it. So now that I've gone through the process that I use to make the easiest rag quilt ever, the challenge is going to make a full rag quilt in a day. That will be coming up next. You can tag me here at Make with Melissa, because I would love to see all the creations that you make. And if you found this helpful, or you found some of the tips helpful, go ahead and hit that like button. Also, I have more rag quilt projects coming, so if you could just subscribe and you'll be notified of that as well. So with that, I am going to go start on the full size of this pattern, because it's for my brother's Christmas present that I need to get started on it. So you'll see some clips about that. But again, this is a teaching quilt. It teaches all the techniques, all the processes, and all you have to do is transfer it to the fabric size of your choice. And one more reminder, you don't have to use the pre-cuts, but I use them because it's the quick and easy way for me to get a quilt, and I don't like to cut fabric. I'm Melissa, this is Make with Melissa, and I hope you have a great day.